What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Huddle, the number one podcast in flooring. We are here every single week to help you guys win and move your career into the future. That was a really fuddled up intro. Sorry about that. I'm just so
Hey,
excited because today we have a very special show for you. Part of the Huddle crew is in Vegas at Coverings, and we have a great guest today. I would almost say he's an expert on our topic, which is professionalism is more than just a logo. I actually changed it out a little bit, but it's essentially that. But before I introduce him, I want to mention today's sponsors, Trade Tap and the BTI. So those of you who are BTI curious, go check it out at bti.com, bti.trade-tap.com. So our crew is there at Coverings. We got Jorge and Daniel Gonzalez. Kevin's hanging out. They're hanging out, I should say, at Kevin's booth. QEP Roberts, one of the best tool manufacturers in the entire universe, with one of the best installers on the planet in Kevin Keefe.
on the planet.
Well,
Welcome,
heck of
guys.
an intro.
Yeah, so Brandon is catching some signal, and in the meantime, I thought we would, jump right into the topic for a quick second. You guys are in Vegas at Coverings, and obviously you're surrounded by logos and people and everything. And I was talking to Daniel earlier, and he said, it seems like the installers around here are kind of representing themselves a little different than I'm used to seeing at some of the other shows. So, Daniel, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there in Vegas.
Yeah, you just see the sense of pride with these guys, right? They, first of all, I didn't expect to see as many like contractors and installers as I do here, because I think we've seen more just in a little bit than we typically do at Ties. And Jorge and I were even talking to the people from Ties yesterday, and they said, that is one of their goals, is to get more installers there too. So they're always looking for ideas. So if you're out there listening right now and you have some feedback for them, let them know what is it going to take to get more installers out there, right? But these guys are walking around with, collared shirts on, their logo plastered everywhere, and just very, very proud of what they're doing in the industry. And we were at the Rockstar event yesterday, and shout out to the NTCA, for inviting us out here, and thank you to Roberts QEP for. We kind of took over this entire corner over here in their booth to do the podcast. They had to move some of their stuff, so man, it's amazing what they're doing here, and it's amazing that these guys out here are so proud to be installers and doing what they love. And I just love seeing that, because my brother tried getting a guy on who, when we were starting, was like we were kind of those people, like we didn't care, we didn't have
We were
that
ghetto,
image.
bro. Just black. We were ghetto. Just say it, dude.
And,
we were choloing it up.
And he was like, why am I going to trust you if you don't even put your logo on your stuff, right? And
Yeah.
that was the turning point for us. And it's awesome to see all these guys. And the thing is that, you talk about branding and a logo, right? And these guys, they're over here, they're not handing out, here's my business card. It's, here's a sticker. Here's some stickers. Put them on everything. And then once you just search their name, they pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed at this show is, a draw for the installers. There's a lot of demos, a lot of hands-on going on, right? If you want to get installers and like-minded people together, give them something to play with. Let them see it visually, right? Let them ask the questions. There's full showers going up. It's amazing. It's a really big draw for installers, and it's nice to see them coming out here, because education starts with the manufacturer of the products that you're using, right? It's good to talk to these guys, see how it's done properly. And, I'd like to see more of that at TICE too. More hands-on, more demos, more classes.
I think we all would. I think it would be welcomed. I want to introduce our guest for the day. Well, our other guest with Kevin is Brandon Wilson. Brandon Wilson started a general contracting firm here in Wichita, and he sold that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Something I'll let him kind of elaborate a little bit. But Brandon also, after he sold that, started a company called Integra Building Advisors, I believe, and what he does is he represents building owners to kind of facilitate and be the intermediary to make sure that jobs go the way that they're planned and that the general contractor does their job. But I want Brandon to tell us a little bit, because one of the things when working with him over the years is the professionalism that he brought to the table, not just with project managers, but his superintendents, his foremen, and his laborers all represented the company like at the highest level. So Brandon, welcome to the Huddle. We appreciate you coming on. I want to disclose that I called Brandon about 2 hours ago. I was like, hey man, I need you on my podcast. And so he was gracious enough to join us. Brandon, take it away. Tell us a little bit about.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, sorry I didn't have time to do my hair, guys. But anyway.
It looks good from here.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I am mobile, so can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like Paul said, about it's been 20 years ago now, because I sold the company 5 years ago. I started a contracting business out of my basement, and we grew it to kind of a medium-sized contractor in our area. And then I was approached and decided to sell it. And so now I pretty much just do what Paul said. We call it owner's representation, which are consulting services when owners go to build a project and they need a little bit more horsepower or somebody experienced in the industry if they're not familiar with it, even if they are familiar with it. And so I jump in as a consultant and kind of just help through the design and the construction. But going back to what Paul was saying about with image, I put a big emphasis on image when I had my construction company. So, with us being in construction, everybody kind of looks, I don't want to say down on us, but we're kind of, architects and engineers are above us, and then you got your general contractor, and then you got your trades below that. And I tried to raise the bar, whether it was internally within our general contracting business, but even with our subcontractors, whether they were flooring or electrical or the painters, pretty much anybody. So the way I did that was when we had project meetings, not only did I expect my employees to dress appropriately, but the subcontractors that would join us in our meetings, I expected them to dress appropriately. So it's a little hard when even our own superintendents in the field, we're doing some hands-on work or cleaning or unloading materials, and they would get hot and sweaty and dirty. But I expected them for the meeting to change their shirt, put on a simple polo shirt that had the logo on it, like you were mentioning, put on a new fresh hat that's brand new, not the one that's got the sweat ring in it and all the dirt collecting on it. And I just expected them to come look professional, because the way I looked at it was, we've all driven down the road, pulled up next to some sort of a contractor or a subcontractor truck at a stoplight, and saw how dirty it was, how dented it was, how rusted it was, papers all over the dash. And so I would ask myself, if I needed work done, would I call that company? And if I asked you the same question, you'd probably say, probably not. If that dirt was or if that truck was in really bad shape, or from a cleanability standpoint, really bad. But you're going to go hire the contractor that shows up in a nice clean truck. It doesn't have to be brand new. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be clean, well taken care of. And then when that individual gets out of his truck, his or her truck, what do they look like? Do they have jeans with torn holes all over it, and paint all over it, and sheetrock mud all over it, and glue all over it in your guys' situation? So it's not any different than going and having a surgery done on your hand, and the surgeon walking in and clothes, it looks like you
dirty
just came
fingernails.
from doing yard work. Yeah, I mean, so or the waiter that comes, or the waitress that comes to serve you and isn't dressed appropriately. It just doesn't give you a good vibe, right? So I tried to use as analogies with our employees and even our subcontractors to we've got to raise the bar in our industry, and whatever perception that owner has of you, whether you're a project manager, estimator, in accounting, superintendent, foreman, carpenter, doesn't matter. Whatever perception they have of you is how they think the work is going to turn out, right?
Yes.
The work that you're doing on their job. So, like Paul said earlier, I just put some emphasis on the image part of it. You know,
So
our superintendents had company vehicles. We paid for the, and I told our tenants, I want you washing your truck on a, regular basis. So what we did is we had weekly superintendent meetings for scheduling and talking about projects. And about once a quarter, we would draw a number out of a hat, and whichever superintendent had that number, we would all go outside and inspect his truck, see what it looks like. So they didn't know it was coming. They did not know it was coming.
that's a good
So
idea.
that forced them to have their trucks cleaned, at least for every meeting, right? Which was every week. Yeah, basically every week. And it paid off. It's all about perception. You can be the best installer, the best project manager, the smartest estimator in the world, but if you don't come across that image-wise, it tends to just kind of lower the bar as far as who you're dealing with or who you're working for. So,
Well, one of the things that you guys did, and I think is valuable for all of us to consider as we're talking about professionalism, and it goes beyond the logo, but the logo or your mark is it's still important to have something that represents your company. And you designed your guys' mark, and I thought it was a really beautiful mark that you guys have or had before you sold it. And all of those things together gave you an exit out of your construction company that was very beneficial for, I don't know the deals of it, but I'm just saying it was a beneficial thing for you. And they got a great, whoever the people that bought you got a great company that they could take over and take forward. But you were able to sell it because of not only the clientele that you got, because of your image. And that image goes down through the way you do your job. Like,
sure does.
It's more than just telling them to wear a logoed shirt. It kind of boils down to creating that expectation. Also boils down to the work that gets put in place. And I still enjoy a lot of those superintendents that work for the company, and it was it's been a blessing to work with you guys over the years. And even after you've left, the same superintendents and those guys, they still kind of uphold that professionalism that outshines a lot of superintendents in the market.
Yeah, everybody likes free stuff, right? So obviously, like most companies, we provided free clothes to our employees, and they were super proud to wear it. But what I did a little bit differently, and I'm not a rocket scientist or the expert at it, but I would spend a little bit more time with the embroidery company on what the different options were. So we've all seen really cheap, even if you have the coolest logo design, you've all seen it look really cheap on a certain piece of fabric, on a shirt or a jacket or a hat. And so I spent a little bit of extra time kind of working through where's the positioning of it. I would put the logo on the back and I'd put it on the front, because I can't tell you how many times I'd have somebody call me and say, hey, we were eating lunch at such and such restaurant, and we saw a bunch of guys. They didn't even know who they were. They just saw a bunch of guys over there with your logo on it. And those guys and gals are walking billboards, right? So when they wear your clothes, they're representing the entire company, not just themselves. So you have to be extremely careful on, number one, what the clothing looks like and who's wearing it. But the way we, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that finish your story, because I was just gonna bring Jorge in, because I wanted to get his thoughts on what he's doing now. He has started building his brand, and
he's kind of in that transition, right? So
yeah.
The other thing we did is we provided a clothing
die?
allowance.
They die that fast?
Okay.
Go ahead.
And there
Continue
goes
because
that.
we're still live. So sorry,
Yeah.
we're having some problems with our coverings, guys. Go ahead, Brandon.
That's all right. Well, another thing we did is we would notice, some of our field crews would show up and their boots were 5 years old, and they were great boots. They still loved to wear them. They were broken in, but they just did not look aesthetically pleasing, or jeans or whatever it was. And so we actually created a program once a year where we would buy them and set up an account at a boot store that was like a boot store,
Yeah.
not a cheap knockoff boots that you buy, at a big box store. But we would say you have an allowance of X amount of dollars, and it was enough to go get
Every time
almost
you
any
mess around with
store.
those, it cuts
And
out.
so that they had a good fresh pair of boots for the entire year. They not only looked better, but they were safer. The soles were good. They weren't worn out. So from a safety standpoint, we felt like it was worth it too, to provide that allowance. But we did that with other things like jackets and things of that sort. But we wanted them to look professional. And at the end of the day, we all know that when you put on some clothing that you like and that's newer, you just feel better about yourself, right? So every day when they came to work, we wanted them to have some nice clothes so that they just felt better about what they were doing every single day. So
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology behind it, and I'm not a psychology expert, but just providing those types of things. Sometimes we didn't have to give them pay raises or whatever. I mean, we did. We were good to our people, but we tried to make them feel good about themselves going to work and proud of who they were and what they did and the company they worked for. And it went a long ways.
That's what I was going to say. Like, most importantly, it's, putting on that clothing and then representing the company you work for and being proud of that, right? And that's it goes a long way. That's because we do the same thing. We provide everyone with, shirts, hats, jackets, coats, and everything. And that's what
Even boots now too. But if they order them.
That's what, Hud has kind of in that transition right now where he's branding himself. He's getting the shirts, getting the hats, and everything. So I think Paul had a question for you there.
Yeah, and taking a bath like every day instead of every other day.
You still take baths,
I'm
bro?
sure the customers can appreciate that. No, my question for you, Jorge, is as you're going through this, a lot of times what we think it's just, about putting a logo. I remember when I did my first one for my company, I thought, I just drew it up and that was what we were. And I didn't realize the effort that needed to go into the brand ahead of time and that it represents what you believe in. And you're right at the beginning of that. I know you've had your company for a while, and for those out there, Jorge's like one of the best high-end carpets and area rugs and these things. He does stair runners that would blow your mind. And but you work a lot with designers and such. I mean, directly with designers, because they know you can do the type of work they want done on these high-end homes. What was did that push you to start branding, being around the designers and such, or what got you there? Because you've been doing this for a while before you decided to start doing that.
Yeah, basically just changing my presence when I come to somebody's home. Of course, I'm working in these like multi-million-dollar homes. Sometimes the owners are there, sometimes they're not, but I deal directly. Since I deal directly with the decorators and designers and architects, then you want to present yourself a certain way. So branding was pretty important because now I can at least get all the gear that I need with my names, my logos, and just show it off that way so I look a lot cleaner versus me just going like I used to. I used to buy a bunch of shirts at Sam's and I would put them on, some dry fit stuff. Everything looked different every day, and it does make a difference when you start looking a little bit different at your job site. I'm not gonna say I don't do that now, because I'll sweat out. Most of my stuff's in black, so when I'm at 106-degree weather in San Antonio, Texas, I'm gonna take that off at some point, and I'm gonna put on a regular shirt or a regular dry fit. But when I'm gonna go meet these people up front, face to face, and I want to make sure I'm clean and shaven, and hopefully I have a haircut at that time. That way I can look, I can look sharp.
Yeah. Well, it's I wanted to bring in the with the installers. Our audience is pretty dominant on the trade labor side of the world. Um, how important is it to display your certifications, things like that, like making the people know that you know what you're doing? And how, and then I want you to answer that, Brandon. How did you do that? Like, how did people have the confidence to hire you? How did they know you knew what you were doing? So start it off, Jorge, and then I want to hear your thoughts, Brandon.
Oh, okay. So yeah, with me, it's important for me to, at least on my business cards, I have my certifications on there. It lets them know that I'm natural fiber certified. I'm also certified in CFI. Of course, there's other certifications that we have. You can't fit everything on there, but at least those are the two dominant ones that I have, and I use them. And at some point, when you start dealing with the same decorators and designers, they know that you know what you're talking about, and it really shows in the work later on. So that's very important for me, and I definitely try to display it, put my especially my logo on my shirts, on my cap, and then my CFI or NFIC number. And if not, I will wear my NFIC shirts, and hopefully I can embroider my name on them and have my certification number on them. And it does show that this guy's at least he's certified in something, and he's getting knowledge whenever he can to upgrade to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, first off, go to certifications and trainings, guys, to get the knowledge so that the product at the end is good. Because what I wanted to point out is that you can have the best logo and nice shirts, but if you don't do good work, and Brandon, that's one of the reasons I thought you were such a good person to bring on is you ran, like when you were doing it, you ran jobs differently. You did not, it was like we were involved we were involved with the whole process when we did jobs with you guys, and that's just different than a lot of general contractors. And so knowing what you're doing and being able to present that, how did you overcome that as a general contractor?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important that anybody you can get to wear your logo is beneficial, because I always put myself on the other side of the table. If I'm the consumer, whether I'm at a restaurant or I'm getting my truck worked on at the Ford dealership, you like to see the people working there with the Ford logo or the restaurant logo or whatever, so that you just know they're bought in. It just has something to it that they're engaged, they're bought into who they work for, and that the company takes pride in their employees. So first and foremost, to identify the company you work for, I think is super important, and anybody that's working on the project. Secondary, I don't get caught up in the credentials a whole lot, and here's why: because most people don't understand what those credentials are when they're not in your industry. So it's great for you guys to have the credentials, but again, if you were to go to a medical office of some sort and your surgeon had 5 different credentials behind his name, we probably don't know what that means, because we don't live in that world, right? So
no, but I want to see him, to be honest. But I want to see him. I want to see that he's credentialed in some manner. I don't even have to understand.
I think from that aspect, it's just knowing that there's some continuing education going, other than, yes, I got this degree and now I'm doing this, right? Because in our industry, there's nothing for that, but in every other industry, you have to have continuing education for everything, and that's where these certifications come in for us.
Yeah, we finally have.
Yeah, and I'm not
finally, but.
Yeah, and I'm not against the certifications and naming them. I think that's great. I mean, yes, do it for sure. What I'm trying to get across is most people won't understand what that means. So if they ask, then you can explain it to them. What I'm more about is, like Paul said earlier, when I'm doing it as a general contractor, I'm going to bring Paul as the contractor to my meetings before they get started to introduce them to the architect and the owner, and anybody else involved on the ownership side, whether it's a landlord or whatever. And we're going to say, hey, this is Paul Stewart, my flooring contractor. We're going to be utilizing him for the flooring installation throughout the project. I wanted to see if anybody had any questions. That engages conversation, and then Paul almost sells himself, right? I mean, I don't have to give him all the credentials and everything. Paul can, once Paul starts talking and asking questions, giving options and everything, that they already know, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. So most general contractors, and not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't even engage their subcontractors in the meetings with the owners. And so Paul's right. They don't even know who's doing the flooring. They never have any engagement. So, you might ask your clients that you're working for, whether architects, general contractors, unless you're going direct, hey, do you mind if I, meet the owners or meet the architects, see if they have any questions for me as the expert, so that before we start, so that we can make sure we're meeting everybody's expectations. Once you get everybody engaged, you pretty much sell yourself. So.
Yeah, and I think like with the GCs and the CMs, that's the big thing with us, right? It's building that relationship with them, so that way when anything does come up or early on, they're like, this is who we're working with, this is preferred flooring, they're experts, any questions, definitely come to them, and that's how we want to be known. But it takes a while to build up to that, and I think part of that is getting your foot in the door and the image that you present, like you were saying earlier. You don't want to pull up to someone and it's like, you can't show up to a commercial job site wearing shorts and a cut-off sleeve shirt. It's like you gotta look the part, you gotta feel the part, you gotta be presentable, and show up in that PPE and not complain about it. Like, yeah, it does suck, but it's required. So just show up and do what you have to do, because if you don't, then you're not going to move forward. And that's that's how we built our name. I know that's how Paul's built his name. And as a GC, I imagine that you look at people and it's those people that are like, oh, they show up with everything, and they're not crying every 5 minutes about having to wear safety glasses, right? It's that kind of stuff goes a long way.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I'll give you a quick example. I'm a consultant now, so I'm not the general contractor, but I was representing an owner this last week, and the architect, we had a job site visit, and the architect was with us, and there were 4 people from the general contractor, employees from the general contractor on site, and none of them had hard hats. They just had baseball caps on. And the architect looked at me and said, what's going on? How come nobody's wearing a hard hat? Because that's kind of an industry standard, because we were in the demolition framing stage. It wasn't during the finish stage. And so what that told me was the architect didn't question their knowledge, didn't question who they were, didn't question whether they are qualified to be the general contractor. He just knew that from an image standpoint, they didn't fit the standards of being on the job site. So.
And also, back to what he had said before about, people don't know your certifications or, NFIC, CFI, CTEP, whatever it might be. And that's because we don't, these companies don't market themselves out there to the public. They kind of just market to maybe the flooring industry. But there's a difference between like somebody hiring one of us and maybe going to a retail store that's widely known for not doing great work. And they might be on certain social forums, and that big brand name's going to be on there. They might tear them down or whatever. But it's because they market themselves a certain way, and maybe our industry lacks that, and they don't market it out to the general public, where they can say, hey, wow, these guys that are in this certification, NFIC, CFI, CTEP, NTCA, like these guys are actually going out there and doing this to get ahead of the game, to be on top. And there's other people who don't get certifications, and they go through retail stores, they go through wholesalers, and all they know is the name of that store. They don't know who's coming into their home. Yes. So I think that's another thing that people don't see. Like, we don't market ourselves that way.
It's hard because it costs so much money to really market to the consumer, and frankly, the consumer doesn't. They can get to know the end user, and Brandon, as a general contractor, he can get to know the certifying body, for example. But Brandon, even with all his years of experience, if I started rattling off R1, C2, Master 2,
right, it means nothing.
The only thing that would stick to his head is that Master 2 must be really good. Because it says master.
Until he has a problem on his job, and then he's like, "Why did these guys do it this way?" Well, because
But I don't.
So
That's why
That's when they start
certifications do
looking.
matter, and why we created the VTI is to give those levels that just tell the general contractor that you're a master or an expert or what have you, and you can culminate all your trainings into that one rating, and that is the new kind of calling card. We're expending a ton of funds this next 12 months on marketing to create the VTI to be more like the Carfax for the installer. So that's kind of what you're talking about, Jorge, is there's no real like metric to
Oh,
use.
you're good.
Or I mean, all Brandon does care about though is his electrician licensed? Is it a licensed electrician?
Right.
At least you have a licensing program with electricians, plumbers, and the such. You don't even have that in flooring, which is why we created VTI.
Right. And I don't mean to cut everyone short right now, but me and Hothead do have to take off. We have this Spanish tour coming up that we have to be on. Brandon, I definitely appreciate you
get
coming
lost,
on
David.
today, and thank you and thank you to the NTCA for having us out here over at Coverings, and we look forward to doing this next year. You guys can continue the conversation, and if you guys want, we'll be going live again in 20 or so minutes for the Spanish one. So basically, as soon as this one is done, we'll be live again for that one. So Brandon,
Nice.
thanks,
Text
and I
the
think
link so I can share it.
Kevin has something to say real
I
quick.
just wanted to add to this because I thought this topic was amazing, because this is really where my career started, was when I was told how unprofessional I was by Jim Walker. I was 19 years old. I'll never forget what he said to me. I went home and cried that night. He said, he started with a compliment. He said, you have amazing hand skills. I have no doubt you are going to be an amazing installer. You've got it. Unfortunately, he said, in front of a group of people, unfortunately, you're never going to go anywhere in this business because this is how you represent yourself. And I went home that night, and something clicked in my head. It all made sense at that moment. And I went home and I spent my last dollar on a new outfit. And it never changed from that moment on. If you ever see me installing, which is a rare occasion, I'm in a clean pair of boots, I'm in a collared shirt, and I'm in a pair of double knee-stitched pair of Dickies. That was my outfit. That became my brand, and it started there. And he was so right. Unfortunately, in the world we live in, we are judged. It starts with how you present yourself, and it's easy as how you dress. That's where it starts. You go in, you build rapport with your customer in the first 5 minutes, but that judging already starts when that door opens, right? So don't give them that opportunity to judge you. Let them put that in their mind that you are a professional, that you are an expert, that you are going to do a perfect job. You're going to eliminate unbelievable amount of claims. They're going to be overseen just if they got a flaw, if you build a good rapport and you present yourself properly. So I think this is a great topic. I think it needs to be talked about more. I see a lot of it in this industry, a lot of talented guys that are really just sitting and spinning in one place, and they're not progressing for the simple fact they're not presenting themselves as a true professional. And it's sad. So we need to get out there and let these guys know how powerful just presenting yourself in that kind of way as a professional.
Well,
and look at CFI. That's what we start with, right? That's the first part of our symbol of pride. It's professionalism. It starts right there. So in training, we don't just teach these guys, how to install properly. We teach how to present yourself properly, because it's just as important.
Well, it's the easiest thing.
Jim Walker tore on me too, man. Every time when I had my long hair, I was the example. Every time he'd see me in a class, he'd be like, "Yeah, like those guys that have long hair."
Like those hippies.
I did get my redemption
like those
years
hippies.
later. Right? About 5 years ago, we were at Tice, and I pulled him aside. And I said, "I wasn't going to go anywhere in this career, huh? Remember you telling me that back in 1997?"
Hey, sometimes you need that person to tell you that.
He remembered, and he said, "Listen, I know it was rough, but look at what you made the change." And it's really where my career started, is when I made the switch in my head mentally that I need to present myself properly as a professional. So what a great topic.
I was going to say,
Thanks.
that's kind of like one of the easiest things that you can start with. You said it right, Kevin, and I think Brandon, when he started his company, he did it right. Like, I remember all his superintendents always had logoed shirts. All of everybody from general laborers all the way through the PMs had logoed shirts, and it's like the easiest thing you can start with, like you said, is present yourself properly, clean off your dashboard, wash your truck, and you're going to show up to the job site in a, whether it's a residential or commercial, in a more positive manner than if you show up, in torn
if
up
I could add
jeans and a
something too,
Metallica shirt.
something I see around the country that just kills me is when guys start their companies and the name of their company does not represent professionalism. I mean, I've seen some blaze it up flooring and, the list goes on. So, it's all triggers, right? So we got to think about how people are envisioning us, what they're seeing when we show up and present ourselves. And logo's one thing, but if the name of your company's not right either, that's just as bad. But listen,
right.
guys, we love your podcast here at
Yeah,
QEP
get out of
Roberts.
here, guys.
We're honored to have you guys here. Remember, QEP Roberts, we're solving solutions, giving solutions to problems in the industry. It's a company that's leading the way in innovation and education. So if you're at this show, please come by and stop and talk to us
Booth
about
number.
stuff. Booth number is
62, 68.
68. Okay, so stop on by. Listen, great thing. We should talk about this more.
All right,
great
guys.
episode.
Thanks.
You.
All right,
I'll
thanks,
let you guys
guys.
finish.
I know I've been pretty
Yeah,
quiet this whole thing, but I want to add to some of that too. And you guys everybody's been hitting on everything, right? Like, I do my little notes here on the side, and I kind of wait for times to interject. It doesn't always happen on my time, right? But what Kevin is talking about and what you guys have all been mentioning is we are in a world where judgment is passed on the visual versus the accolades, right? And if we can get our foot in someone's door because of the visual and then present the accolades, then that is very powerful. And I took a little while to learn that part because I was always like, hey, if they don't like me for me, then I guess that who cares, right? But it's not even that. It's, did I like myself where I was sitting in the positions that we were in as I was growing into this industry and as it was growing on me? Once we had that run-in that Daniel talked about where I tried to get the gentleman here and he said that I'll never forget. Like what Daniel said, if you're not willing to put your logo on your guys, why should I be willing to let you work in my establishment? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot.
Ooh.
There's a lot to that statement. And another thing is what they were talking about, the name is just as important as the logo. And Brandon did something pretty special. A lot of companies, and I wish I would have thought of this before naming my company and really understood this. Too late now. I've been around for 25 years and I'm not making a change now. But Brandon did not come out with Wilson Contracting, his last name, construction. He created a whole brand, and I still do work for him. And the brand name itself was not Brandon's name. And for one last thing I'll say is, for every Brandon or Kevin or you guys, there's 10 or 15 others. I know plenty of smaller GCs and smaller trade companies that, do not even have the forethought to do this. I didn't even when I started. So kudos to you for that. But what led you to that, Brandon? What led you to not name the company after yourself?
Well, to be honest with you, we never in a million years, my wife and I, thought we would sell our company. So that never even crossed our mind. But I knew going into business, I didn't want to use my last name because I didn't want it to be just about me. So, it takes a whole lot more than one person to run a company. And so as I knew that we would grow over the years and hire employees, I wanted them to be under just a general name, if you will, and not under my name, because it just felt like, whether you want to call it ego or whether you want to call it, I'm special because I'm going to name the company after me. I wanted them to feel as important in that company as what I was, and them coming in underneath my name, I just felt like it wouldn't be like that. Now, that's not to say, Paul, with your company, and there's a million other people that name their companies after their last names, that it's like that. But I just felt like in the town that we're in, a lot of the very substantial, multi-generational construction companies all had the owner's last name. And I was just ready to kind of do something different, kind of a new generation, because we were obviously a brand new startup. And I just thought it'd be neat to do something different. And the name is very important. And I agree with the gentleman that mentioned that. Like, some people use these names that are just off the wall, and they're almost kind of comical and kind of just what you want to call them, but they're not very professional.
Cutesy.
So you do have to be
They try
very
to get-
careful with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to get cutesy, but you have to make it short and sweet and simple, and something that people can remember. That's the other thing, is a lot of people will use acronyms. I'm not an acronym person because nobody can remember, is it ABC or CBA or BCA? You know, it gets too confusing when you have a bunch of acronyms and everybody else has acronyms. And so I like 4 or 5 letter words that are easy to remember. And then once you get that word, then you're exactly right. The logo kind of sets it apart, you know? So
Yeah.
you also
we went through this with Go Carrera. We got real cutesy with the name and did all this, and it's quite like, if you're watching this, that the name thing matters. Trade Tap has taken off so much better than Go Carrera. A lot of people had problems pronouncing it. They couldn't remember it. It was Go something. Then when they did know what it was, they were like, well, what does it mean? Because they knew it wasn't a daily term. So it didn't roll off the tongue well. Like, there was a lot of problems. You got to be really careful. And you know, I started Go Carrera in 2018. I mean, I still hadn't learned my lesson by then. I certainly learned it now, but like, naming your company, Daniel and Jose's flooring company up in Grand Rapids is called Preferred Flooring, and they named it it wasn't even necessarily a super strategical thing, from my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jose, but people kept saying you are our preferred guys, and you were like, well, we're going to name it Preferred Flooring then.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer, right? Like, look, my last name is Gonzalez. There was no way I was naming it Gonzalez Brothers Flooring, right? Like, that just wasn't going to work. And you know, and I did have a couple other names that I utilized prior to Preferred Flooring, and, you know, and those didn't work out either, right? I was looking at all the big companies, and they're, like you said, the acronyms, right? Or the catchy names, right? That attracted people because it was funny or cutesy. But yeah, Preferred Flooring just came about because they preferred Daniel or I on their job sites. And I remember the conversation. He's like, what should we name it? I was like, Preferred Flooring, dude. People prefer us to do their floors than anybody else. Let's just go with it. He was like, yeah. And it was just like, it was the feeling, right? Like, it felt right. And then the logo thing was kind of, you know, gave my cousin $50 to do some design work on the program, and it started there. But it had.
You guys have grown the company, and you're moving into a new facility. Like, you've grown the company, and the long-term growth. Just to be clear, your logo and your name will never do it. The long-term growth comes from delivering great projects.
Yeah,
so all these concepts are secondary to running a good business and doing good quality work. But then you also could do that and not meet the level of success that you could if you didn't get your logo and branding and image right. So they're both important, but the most important is that you do good quality work and you care about delivering great projects.
Yeah, it's so, and this is what I've learned over time, and you guys can add to this too. Is if you're able to put, you know, you're like, we're humans, right? We're phenotype. We're gonna see what's on the outside. If you're able to utilize the visuals to get inside, get your foot inside someone's door, then the work that you put out and your work ethic and your ability to communicate is going to keep you there. It just definitely adds to the value, and, like, I don't want to say like the. How do I put it?
Well, it opens the door, but you got to perform to not get kicked out of the door. Like, I mean, it opens a door for you, but you got to continue to do good quality work, which, I mean, you guys, and for your info, Brandon, for I mean, most of our guests know, but or most of our audience knows that you guys are like really highly revered for your skill set there in Grand Rapids. I mean, you guys, your brother's one of the trainers in sheet vinyl.
Hmm.
You know, he's gotten all these accolades. Your sister damn near won the international competition in resilient
Yeah.
flooring. You've made a name for yourself. So being
I haven't really done
of
anything like they
quality,
have, but it all
yeah, but
started with
still,
me, right? But that,
it's just important to know that the quality matters. And Brandon, to bring you back in on this conversation, that was one of the things I'll never forget. Is every time we would meet with an owner or something, you would set the expectation with the subs, not necessarily by saying you guys do this. You were just like, and you'll get a great job out of Stewart and Associates or whatever, right? Like you're setting me up not just to be like, but it's an accountability thing. When you say that, I'm like, shit, I got to do a really good job. He just kind of put me in
Yeah.
a position where I have to perform at a high level.
Well, a lot of times, going back to the acronyms and the credentials, that's all super important. But when I'm sitting in front of an owner or an architect, and I've got my flooring contractor next to me, the way I'm going to introduce them is, "Hey, this is Paul Stewart, Stewart Associates. He's been in the flooring industry for 20 plus years. He does over half of our work." Right there, they bought into him. That the credentials go away, all of that stuff. And so, and I'm looking at it from a general contractor standpoint. Obviously, it's a little bit different if you guys are working for owners direct or whatever the situation may be. But that's all I need to do to sell them is they're hiring me. So every sub is underneath me as a general contractor. So they're relying on me, just like we would a doctor to have nurses and admin staff
oh
and
yeah,
whoever's, you're relying on your doctor to have the support staff or whoever they need supporting them to do what they're supposed to do. But, so I keep relating it back to the medical industry just because sometimes it's easier to relate. But, at the end of the day, it's all about teamwork. So going back to Paul, you saying, well, its image is not as important as just doing the work and doing a good job. I kind of compare it to, like, let's say making some cookies. You've got, flour, sugar, eggs, milk, all this stuff that has to go in ingredient wise to make that cookie and make that cookie successful, right? And if any one of those ingredients is off or out of proportion or not there, then that cookie won't turn out the way it should, right? So at the end of the day, business is the same way. Your accounting department has to be good. Your management staff has to be good. Your field management staff, your subcontractors, like all of these parts and pieces all come together to make that cookie. And if not, that cookie still may be edible, but it may be super runny because they put too much milk in or not enough milk,
nobody wants
whatever,
a
right?
soggy cookie.
Yeah. So, so at the end of the day, business, whether you're in our industry or any other industry, like all those moving parts and pieces have to be somewhat equal to make a really good company, right? So there's always the weakest link we've all heard about. You're only as good as your weakest link, and so it comes down to just making sure every department, if you will, every different role in the company, is doing their part to make a good, successful company.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that all the ingredients matter and that you got to have the right level of them. But some ingredients in that cookie are more important than others still.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there are.
There's certain
You
things
don't
that
need
will
as much sugar
completely,
as flour. Yeah.
exactly. There's certain things that will ruin the cookie. And so there are still more important levels to it. All I'm saying is that you can put the best logo, the best
Yeah.
brand with all the best marketing and all the best stuff. And we know these companies that then do that and the product is not that great. I mean, I don't think I'll get, in too much trouble for saying that McDonald's doesn't make the best hamburger, but they are one of the most successful companies on the planet because they they have a good product. They did all the marketing and all their systems, so they have the perfect balance in
Hmm.
that type of a business. In our business, we in construction in general, when you have these layers of people kind of reviewing your work, you got, if you do our type of business in commercial construction, we have, the foreman or the superintendent that looks at it. Then you got the PM at the GC firm, and then you got the architect or the designer, and sometimes the architect themselves, and then you got the owner that's looking at it. And so the quality has to be up there to where it's a good long term, and plus these things have to last, right? That hamburger, although the McDonald's hamburger might last 10 years without being eaten,
That might last a while.
but our products have to last the test of time. So it just, to me, I believe that doing good quality work, is the number one ingredient. But to go back to one other thing you said, Brandon, when you introduced me, I've already done my job by doing you such good work in the past, and taking care of the needs and and listening to your feedback, that you have the confidence to say something like that about me. So I get all my credentialing because of you in that meeting, but all the credentialing really came because you and I work together on other projects. So if a sight unseen, though, you want to know that you're dealing with someone who knows what they're doing. And if you've never met me and you're a new GC and you're just meeting me, I've got to do some things to make sure that you're comfortable with my ability to get your job done. And it goes beyond the logo. It goes into the professionalism. It goes into the fact that I can say, well, I installed for many, many years. I mean, I say this to new GCs or new customers all the time. Like, I'm master certified sheet vinyl guy. I know how this stuff's supposed to go down, and our installers, because of that, also know. And, we know what to look for on difficult projects. And so if you got a fast-paced project where your team or, whatever, so you can present yourself however, but those credentials, when you go down to the level of the tradesman, it really starts to matter.
You know what? You guys just made me realize too that, fortunately for me, I had gentlemen that we worked for that were nice enough to take me into these meetings and introduce me the same way that you said he introduced you. And it's, that was where, that I don't want to say dressing up, right? But you got to be the part. And unfortunately, some people don't like to be the part and go against the grain a little bit. And I was one of them. I'll be honest. Right? I was one of them, but I didn't always have the luxury of dressing the part before a meeting because I was coming from installing right to a meeting. But I would have an extra shirt with me that was clean. I would do my best.
You got it though. I mean, like at the end of the day, you started to realize how important those things are.
So, yeah, well, you guys just made me realize that the logo, the branding, and everything else that puts you in a position to get your foot in the door is just that. You just want to make sure that your foot doesn't stink, right? You want to make sure you have the clean socks and the clean shoe on, so that way you can get the other foot in the door, and it's a continued thing. The repeat business that comes along with creating the brand and your work persona and the long-term value that we created for our clients, for them to recognize what we were trying to do was huge. And consistency is the one thing that we didn't mention this whole episode, right? Consistency. As long as we're consistent and we're able to replicate installations and meet timelines, being consistent has been very huge for us. And consistency also includes accountability, saying, hey, our guys put a ding in the wall. Hey, we'll take care of that punch item. Or, hey, we're a little bit behind schedule. And this is why, right? And having the information and all of that just ties right into what we're talking about today on that topic. And it's just, you could probably go on for days on what else kind of intertwined and made you realize what you needed, what you were missing, or what you were overdoing that people didn't really pay attention to or really need to see you or your company. He's right. Kevin was right. We could talk about this.
Yeah, we'll do another episode for sure.
Oh, yeah. So, Paul, do you want me to mention the story that you know about with the cuss words? You remember that one?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is pretty impactful. So I just as a human don't really cuss. You know, it's just I don't know. I don't know if it was the way I was raised or what. I just don't cuss. Um, you know, may slip out from time to time, but definitely no F bombs, things like that. So I kind of incorporated that into our company. So, you know, as we grew and we hired more people, things like that, you know, I'd go to job sites and I'd hear the guys kind of cussing out in the field. And so I finally just called everybody in to the company meeting. I said, hey, for now on, I don't want to hear anybody cussing, whether it's in the office or in the field. And you know, I got the eyes rolling in the back of the head type deal, and it's not like it was really bad, but you know, at the end of the day, you don't know who's around the corner at a job site. Like we did a lot of tenant finishes where we were working within the spaces, you know, an attorney's office, and they were right around the corner working in their offices, and or you don't know when an owner is going to show up on a job site or an architect, right? So I just said, hey, the company policy is no cuss words. So everybody bought into it. It was going great. I sell the company. 4 to 5 years later, which was only about 6 months ago, I ran into one of Paul's very long term installers that has worked for him for as long as I've known Paul. And we were just catching up on old times. He said, man, I really miss you. I said, I miss you too. And he said, you know, the one thing that I didn't realize about your company that has changed is when you owned it, nobody cussed at your job sites. He said, it's not like that anymore since you've left. And I could not believe the impact that that had on a subcontractor that we use quite often, probably over half of our work for sure, probably 70% of our work. But he basically told me that he felt so comfortable and just at ease going to our job sites because he didn't have to go, you know, hear that all day long. And it just really was touching on my end to think that that had that much of an impact on somebody that didn't even work for me. Like, and I didn't see him day to day on the job sites, right? Because I wasn't at every job during every phase of construction. So I think it goes a long ways. And again, like I started the conversation out with, or the story out with, is you never know who's around the corner and who's going to take offense to that. Owners, architects, even just other people working on the job site, right?
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes for the character too.
We talked about logos and names and all that, but really how you present yourself and represent your company is probably the number one most important part of professionalism. We talked about the building blocks of how you can, you know, up the water level for your company, but you know, the nitty gritty is how do they act and what is their attitude out on job sites. And they've always, you know, that's always been a real impressive thing when you deal with good companies, is how they're able to communicate even in complicated situations without losing their cool and acting like the world, like we're building rocket ships sending babies to the moon or something. It's like we're in construction. You don't have to take it so far that you're acting in a manner that is not professional at all. And I've been in those conversations when I was a young man, and ashamed of a lot of them. But you know, over the years, you know, how you present yourself and how you talk to other people says a lot about you. So we've come up to before we get into another deep dive of anything, I want to say thank you, Brandon, for joining us today. You know, shout out to the crew there in Las Vegas at Coverings, holding it down with the Huddle there. And we just want to thank you so much for joining us today, Brandon. Thank you for your insights on how important it is for professionalism and logos and attitude, the whole work. So all of our viewers out there, give us a like and subscribe. You'll catch us back on YouTube, guys. So if you get it, the non-live version, please subscribe to us. I want to do a quick shout out to Divergent Adhesives for sponsoring this episode as well. If you have a difficult project, moisture concerns, any of that kind of stuff, make sure to look at Divergent. They are one of the number one brands in the industry when it comes to adhesive manufacturing. Sonny over there knows what he's doing. and he's guided that company into a great adhesive brand. So check out Divergent Adhesives. And with that, I want to say thank you to all of our audience and people
All
who
the
are
comments
into
too.
all the comments. Sorry, we didn't get to all of them. The
We
conversation
suck today
was
at that.
fun.
We'll
We
be
got
honest.
to a lot of them, but Daniel does that usually, and
Yeah.
he's off in Vegas doing his own thing. So we're going to close it out for now, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And Brandon, thanks for joining us on the Huddle podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.